And now we're pleased to present the next in our series of readings from Second Story's new anthology. Now, if you don't know, Second Story is a collective of storytellers who hold classes and workshops and host performances that fuse page, stage, and sound to deliver a unique live literary theatrical experience. Some of the best of those true stories have been collected in the new anthology, Briefly Knocked Unconscious by a Low-Flying Duck, published by Elephant Rock Books. And tonight we have not only a Second Story alum, but a Tuesday Funk veteran to read from her contribution to the book. She's the author of The Temple of Air, which was a finalist for the Society of Midland Authors Best Book Award and the Devil's Kitchen Reading Award. She's received 4 Illinois Art Council awards and was nominated for the Carnegie Foundation U.S. Professor of the Year. She teaches in Columbia College Chicago's fiction writing department. We're delighted to introduce Patricia Ann McNair.
Yeah, my favorite part, Bill gets on his knees before me.
Yeah, we did this once before, didn't we?
Same old joke. Hi, it's great to see you all. We are definitely twisted, it seems like, tonight. I'm going to be reading excerpts from my essay here in Briefly Knocked Unconscious by a Low-Flying Duck. And it too is a love story between a woman and a man, a woman and her mother, a woman and a place, and probably most importantly, a woman and her cat. It's called Return Trip. Okay, so we're on our way to northern Michigan, me and Philip, my now husband, my then boyfriend, and it's the late summer of 2003. And we turn off the interstate, and there it is, the sound. The car is definitely talking. Hit the radio, I tell Philip, and he does. Yep, that damn sound is still there. Like the radio turned low and badly tuned, a whispering under the wheels, ghosts. We're on our way to Glen Arbor, where we're going to share a residency. Philip doing his painting and printmaking, and me, my writing. My writing that, since our last trip up north, and with the wedding and funeral and moving and plain old city life, seems to work just like this car, more rattle and noise than anything else. Our last time here in northern Michigan in 2001, I was teaching writer-in-residence at Interlaken, a small arts boarding school deep in the woods and far away from the city. Philip was with me, or I thought he was with me. On the way up, though, he said something like, "I may not stay here very long." Here, I said. Here? You know, the United States? He's British, by the way. Here, or here, Interlaken? Here, he said, Interlaken, here. We were sort of living together then, trying it out, even though he still had a foot in London, had a show opening there, would be going back and forth. Oh, I said, or maybe, sure, fine, whatever. Asshole. I must have been protecting myself, of course, but still, he came with me then in 2001, he and my fat black cat, the real love of my life, Rafiki. So it was 2001, like I said, right? And the first day of classes was September 11th, 2001. September 11th, 2001. I didn't have a television in my tiny 2-room cabin, so I heard about what happened in New York, in D.C., and in that field in the middle of the country when I got to school. And after I'd heard, I walked into the girls' bathroom and found one of my students there. She was sobbing, trembling, hyperventilating. Her face was white and wet. "I have to talk to my parents," she said. Her parents were teaching in Qatar, and the girl couldn't get through on the phone. "My father," she said, and gulped for breath. I patted her back, stroked her hair. "My mother." Later that day in my cabin that smelled like summer camp, mold, wet pine needles, bug spray, I called my own mother home in Evanston. And on her answering machine, her voice was distant, shaky. She'd made the recording after we'd got the diagnosis, before I could start to worry. I remembered it was Tuesday, chemo day. She'd be at the hospital. On September 15th, 2001, there were no planes flying from Cherry Capital Airport, so Philip stood on line at the bus station with the late summer tourists and students and salesmen. He was due back in London for a gallery opening, so he'd take the crowded bus to Chicago, where he'd wait to catch a flight back to the place that was still sort of home for him. A few days after that, I drove home to visit my mother. She was battling stage 4 lung cancer, and I dreaded all that was to come, but that drive alone in my car on that September day was spectacular. The road was a dark vein with the trees beside it going red, going gold, going orange, and it all stunned me. The gentle slope of land and the curve of the highway as it passed close to Lake Michigan and through those small towns was almost too much to bear. I cried most of the way. Chemotherapy was meant to enhance my mother's quality of life, the doctor said. That was the best we could hope for, since the disease was inoperable and incurable. Terminal, they meant, though no one said it. 4 months had passed since we discovered what the back pain and cracked ribs and labored breathing had been caused by, and this new mixture of drugs had had a good effect on her. Her breathing was easier. She was in better spirits, less pain, and the tumor had even gotten smaller. She had her favorite nieces come to stay with her one after the other, while I, her only daughter, ran off to another state for 5 months. She came to visit on Parents' Weekend, her last trip anywhere. She'd been a travel writer most of her life, always happiest on the road, so she understood why I'd left. Now I wanted to show off to her, to read her the dozens of pages I'd been able to write in the quiet, to walk with her over my running path through the wetlands. I wanted her to love as I did the little cabin I lived in with Philip when he wasn't off in London or somewhere, and with my cat Rafiki. But she was sick that weekend, her head and lungs thick with cold. I drove her to Sleeping Bear Dunes to look at the Great Lake and see the changing leaves, and she slept in the front seat beside me, snoring softly, her wig slightly askew under her hat, missing the bright yellow trees against the blue sky, the crimson weeds standing roadside. She'd grown up in Vermont, and I wanted her to see a real autumn one more time, but she didn't wake up. And I couldn't help but think, as I drove through the woods, that this is how things look when they begin to die. On our way to Glen Arbor in 2003, Route 31 takes us into Pretty Bear Lake. The noise of the car is bigger now, like a truck, no, more like a semi. But my eyes are on the road, what's ahead, what I want to, no need to get to, tonight, a cabin, the woods. I'm willing the car to make it, please make it. And I know that this might be considered praying by some, that sort of praying that those of us do even if we don't really believe in prayer. Please make it, I say in my head, please make it. Don't die, don't die, don't die, don't die, don't die. On the last day of Parents' Weekend, Rafiki got sick. He'd crouch in a corner and growl, or find a warm spot in the sun on the carpet and curl into a black heap. He wouldn't eat. When my mom left, I took him to the vet. No big deal, it seemed, a urinary tract infection. Cats get them all the time. We kept him for a few days. Philip came back again, and we brought Rafiki home to the cabin with a big, expensive bag of special food that he wouldn't eat. The vet suggested baby food, but that didn't interest Rafiki either. Don't worry, the vet said, he'll eat when he's ready. Now, she was a dog person, I could tell. She didn't know shit about cats. Cats do things their own damn way. A cat don't want to eat, a cat don't eat. Shit, cat people know this. Philip left again, and Rafiki took a turn for the worse. He barely moved, he still wasn't eating, and he stopped drinking water. I wrapped him in a towel and took him to a different vet. No more dog vet for him. And she felt under his ribs, asked questions, checked his eyes and ears and vitals, and said that he had a mass in his abdomen. They took x-rays, and it looked like his liver, like maybe a tumor. Exploratory surgeries, she suggested. And you know how it is. When someone you love is ill, you'll try anything. It turned out to be fatty liver disease, often brought on when a fat cat stops eating. Those damn dog vets. And I found myself searching the internet for information just like I'd done when they named Mom's cancer. It didn't have to be fatal, most said, but it often was. The vet suggested a feeding tube stitched into the stomach so he'd be less likely to vomit. I had to go home for Thanksgiving, the last one I would get to celebrate with my family as I knew it, and so I visited Rafiki before I left. Poor Rafiki, his belly was shaved and wrapped in an ace bandage. He trembled and stared at me from his cage, his golden eyes wide. He was terrified. I was terrified. And yet, now there's a pattern here. I left. And I went home to my stronger but still dying mother. I came back to Interlaken a day earlier than planned after our family Thanksgiving, my chest aching from the leaving and from what I had to return to. I would pick up Rafiki and continue the tube feeding myself, even though it didn't seem to be working at the vet's. Sometimes it helps to be home, he said. Philip called regularly during all of this, but he was so far away. Things are happening here, he'd say about his art, his show. This might not be the right time to move. Oh, I'd say, I see. My cat was dying. My mother was dying. I held the phone tighter in my hand. Soon I would be alone. Now by now, you're probably wondering why the hell would I want to come back to this place? Cats die here, like Rafiki did when I couldn't save him, when I took him back to the vet to put him to rest. Mothers and boyfriends live hundreds, thousands of miles away, but here it is, 2003 again, and our car is rattling toward Honor, and we pass that crazy place with the cartoon character lawn ornaments that flank a sign that says, "Jesus died for us." Behind the display is a house with a sagging front porch. The closest neighbors are at least a mile away. A man moves out to the country, and no one is around for miles. This is the way an old joke starts. He gets invited by a grizzly, dirty old neighbor guy to a party. You've heard this, right? You know how it goes. I'll give you the short version. They'll be drinking. They'll be fighting. They'll be fucking. Yada, 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 right? What should I wear? The new guy asks. Don't matter, the neighbor says. It'll just be the two of us. Loneliness, my friends, is a scary thing. But here's what I know now. It can be a good thing, too. Being alone in the woods in a 2-room cabin with snow outside and black squirrels like ink blots on white, and you're so far away from the noise of the city where planes can crash into towers and mothers can die, will die in your arms, but not yet, not yet. And in that cabin you are warm under an Afghan on the couch crying and listening to Tom Waits on the stereo. And no one can shush you, tell you not to cry, when you think how glad you are that you could do something, that I could do something to stop my cat from hurting, and that he, that damn Rafiki, could do his spirit guide animal thing for me, so selfless, dying for me, making me stay and face it, giving me a practice run. Philip, still in London, cried when I told him about the last trip to the vet over the phone, missing Rafiki, missing me. I'm coming back, he said. And maybe we both knew then he meant for good. And before we left northern Michigan, we decided to marry. My mom lived long enough to be part of the wedding, and 3 months after that, I held her while she died. When we reach Glen Arbor, we don't know where we're going. It's dusk now, but we guess at a turn, and then there's a sign for the place, and when we turn again, the motor stops, but the car doesn't. I crank the engine over and over. We're almost there, and it starts, and we limp the few yards and coast into the spot in front of this other cabin in the woods, and we're here. We've made it. It's nearly September again, and the leaves high in the trees are already starting their change. In the evening shadows, we unpack the car that is quiet now. No more rattle, no more ghost voices, and we leave it and go get some beers, some French fries, some whitefish. At a table in a restaurant in the woods close to Lake Michigan, hundreds of miles from Chicago, 2 years from our last visit, we toast one another, the tenacious little car, the entire noisy, nostalgic trip. We don't say it out loud, but we toast to all that was lost. What is it about a place that draws you to it, no matter the trouble you've seen, no matter how sad you were the last time you were there? This is such a place. The place I escaped to when my mother got sick, where I could write in the quiet. The place where we drank coffee in a cool, dark kitchen the morning the towers went down. where we stood looking out at a great lake and agreed to spend our lives together here in the U.S., where we ran through the woods on a path that circled back to our cabin, where Rafiki met us at the door, tail swishing and whiskers tickling our ankles. And we're so glad we made it, so damn glad to be here, back in this place where we've been before, back where some things ended, yes, but back where everything else started. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. God, I love that essay. But now it's time for a goddamn beer.